My name is Delilah Lily Gardner, and my pronouns are she, her. Female. I started transitioning medically about 2 years ago, but I mean, I've always been trans. Mostly white. I do have some Native American heritage through both my mom's side and my dad's side. Blackfoot and Cherokee, though it's minimal. Portland, Oregon. I grew up in Florida mostly. I was born in Ohio, lived in Alabama for a few years, and then I lived for about 26 years in Florida. The West Coast, up and down. So Fort Myers, Naples, like the Southwest area, as well as Tampa, Sarasota, and then a little bit in Lakeland. It's it's a bit pretentious for my taste, and didn't really suit having a transition there. So better here. I'm pansexual, which can be described a lot of different ways, but the easy way to think about it is gender blind. I don't really care. I am also polyamorous, meaning I can fall in love with more than one person, and I do pursue a polyamorous lifestyle. So meaning I date more than one person. Right now, I would say I have 3 partners, a cis man, a cis woman, and a non-binary person. So kind of one of my partners calls it being a gold star bisexual, because I have all 3. But it's a joke. Non-binary is not a third gender, so just an inside joke. But beyond that, I wouldn't say I don't know. I can identify as bisexual as well. Like bisexual and pansexual, I consider bisexual to be an umbrella term, and I feel good about the term bisexual as well as pan. So either work for me. But labels are, I don't know, I have a weird relationship with them because I don't think they really should exist for most people if unless you feel them necessary. However, I've found comfort in them personally to be able to say, I am transgender, I am a woman, I am polyamorous, I am pansexual. People know, they get enough information out of that, especially people who are trying to determine if they're trying to be in a relationship with you. Relationship meaning anything from a friendship to a partnership. I didn't start medically transitioning until I was almost 32. So not like super early. Definitely had underwent like a full male puberty. So there was a lot to change for sure. But I mean, hormones are, I, I've said multiple times in my life that hormones definitely like saved my life. It's a situation where for me, I didn't even really realize I was trans or more accept that I was trans until my 30s, even though there was signs all along. Like it was basically when I was 30 years old that I kind of realized and put words to it. It was something that I didn't grow up with exposure to, and any exposure I did have to trans people or even just LGBTQI people in general was pretty negative, or at the very least neutral, or in a sense of like it's an us and them sort of situation is what it felt like. So I didn't really have a lot of representation or a lot of people to like speak to about those things. So it did take a while to I think figure it out per se. But since then, hormones have been an amazing part of my life, and they're not for everyone, obviously, but they definitely saved me, and changed my life in more ways than I can even really imagine that they would have. I know this was about my trans identity, and I don't even know what else to really say about it. Yeah, it's just I'm so much happier now. Like it's life is where it should be. I think before I was heading down darker and darker paths, and it now I'm just a healthier person. I work out more and eat better, and I can meditate, and I'm just a healthier person now because I'm just happier. At this point, rarely. under bathing suits. Pretty much the only time that I put myself through it anymore. Like it is different for everyone, but it's not particularly comfortable for me. I very much like to, if I sit down somewhere, I like to cross my legs. It's just something I like to do. And it's something that is, or at least can be, very uncomfortable when tucked. So it's just something I avoid generally. Some dresses or skirts, but I avoid it. I not often. Maybe a couple times a year at this point. I have zero training in any kind of video, anything. Or even doing anything on a computer, so editing. So, and I feel like it's so obvious. My videos, I kept trying and they got more and more edited as they went on, but it was something that was brand new to me and that I only learned while doing videos. So it's just self-taught through that and just playing around with a program. No, I mean, I watched other YouTubers like to try to see what worked for them, but I think it's more about content than anything else. So that was more important than the editing, though the editing I think helps. It definitely wasn't like the most important part, at least from what I saw. It was definitely content is what drove views. I did it as a personal affirmation. So it was nice to be able to connect with other trans people online. And once I was out publicly, I was able to do that in a much easier way. Through that, I kind of realized how talking about different aspects of being trans, gender dysphoria, gender euphoria, got me thinking about those things and wanting to talk about them. And to be able to talk about them just in a video and hear myself say it, it was a little bit easier to self-analyze as well. So that it started really mostly for that, was just as personal affirmation to feel like I was doing something, but also to kind of talk through my own like issues. So I made all sorts of different videos, like makeup videos. The gaff video was actually a request that someone was like, hey, do you know how to make a gaff? Will you make a video doing so? So I did. That was the whole reason I did it. I also did videos more on my own personal journey, how hormones were affecting me, what surgeries I wanted, things like that. And then I also did more politically minded videos talking about the trans erasure that was taking place during the last administration, including setting out like a 3-point program to explain how what was happening was trans erasure. I admit that's basically when I stopped. It was hard to do that little series. And the lack of response from it, I think, hurt more because it seemed like the things that were important or the things that people didn't actually care about, people would, and I understand, especially coming from the trans perspective and what kind of videos I was looking up when my egg was cracking. It's, you look up how to do makeup and you look up what kind of things to wear and how to tuck. Those are the things that you look at the most. And I get that and I understand why that content was more popular. But it was definitely disheartening to find out that what was really important, which was a government trying to pretend like we didn't exist, was much more important and just really didn't get any sort of traction. That's kind of why I don't want to say gave up, because I'm still interested in doing it, but I definitely put it on hold. It was mostly driven, I'd say, just by my literal feelings at the time. If I came across something in social media that seemed important, or something was just on my mind a lot, so, and I wanted to get it out or talk about it, maybe I ran across a different video and decided to do something similar or to talk about an aspect of it that wasn't addressed. So I think with that, there was no clear direction. It was whatever I had on my mind and felt like I needed to talk about. At times, it felt more like a video journal where I tried to speak to an audience and give advice and information and sources and things too, if they wanted them. The content definitely changed. It turned much more political towards the end. But even with that, like I was still incorporating in more things about my personal journey. So the overall format, I don't know if it really changed that much. I shortened the videos because I found audience retention is a lot better when you make it short and sweet. So I shortened my videos. I tried to edit more. I tried to get a lot better about not having the jump cuts feel so harsh. So I found times that made more sense to do that. I think I just paid more attention also, like while I was doing the video, to just if I noticed I said something that I wasn't going to like the way it came out, then I would just stop and repeat myself, so that I had both options and could cut between them a little bit more. I think I tried to start paying attention more to lighting and framing, though I never got really like good at it, and I never really invested the equipment in to try to do so. But I still think overall they got better over time, but the content didn't really change dramatically other than maybe getting a little bit more political. Yeah. So that was actually wasn't even through YouTube. It was someone who did follow my YouTube channel, but we had actually met on Facebook, and they knew I did YouTube videos. They had liked one of the makeup ones I did, so they'd asked me to do the gaff one just because they hadn't made one. Beyond that, like I try to stay on top of responding to people's comments and things like that. They're on the gaff video. Someone had like a couple other questions and ideas, and I would converse back and forth with them. Beyond that, though, other than paying attention or looking at my analytics, there wasn't really much engagement. Like there were just not that many comments on my videos to engage with. There was one other trans YouTuber in Florida. It was a trans man, and him and I would kind of go back and forth a little bit inside each other's comments and recommend each other's videos and channels on each other's channels, kind of just as like a cross promotion kind of thing. So did that for a little while, which is part fan, part like other YouTuber connection. So, but not much. Yeah, it's my gaff video. It's called it says how to tucking tutorial. Let's make a gaff. And right now it has 20,857 views. Like I'd say per day. It's nothing like crazy. Yeah, it's like 75 views a day or something like that. So I get different things from different videos. I wouldn't say I personally have a favorite from me. I rewatch them for different things. I think I love that the gaff video caught some traction, and it seems like I hope that it's helping people. So I think that would be my favorite for that reason, is simply that it exists, more people have seen it, and hopefully it's helped people. That's really what it is, because I hadn't seen one made the way I made it, where it was flatter. So that's kind of why I did it. But I think I get the most out of my gender dysphoria video, though it makes me cry still sometimes when I watch it. Just because the ending is in the end of the video, it's just a recording from me the previous night trying to record that same video and having like an extreme wave of dysphoria. So it just was a visual representation of dysphoria. And to go back and watch it is very interesting. To like from an outside perspective, to see myself like go through it, because it's not something you can normally see yourself go through. And I don't know, I think it's the one I'm just the most proud of for putting out there, because it's scary to put yourself going through something that could be seen, it's like a mental health crisis basically in that moment. But so I think I probably like that one the most. Yeah. When I was doing it more often, I would say Facebook, because you could share the videos amongst different groups. And I got to the point though where I didn't feel like that was like right or fair to be like flooding those pages with those, though it did push the most like traction on the page. On my Instagram, like I would, but at the time, it's at the same time I was doing YouTube videos, my Instagram, my Facebook, all this stuff was like pretty new. And with Facebook, it's one of those things that I found out very quickly that 1,000 people are going to be your friend almost instantaneously, but it's also an extremely toxic environment. So I didn't stay on Facebook, and then eventually only got to the point of only using it for YouTube. And at that point, I don't know, it felt like a weird marketing platform for my own personal page. So I just, I didn't continue doing it. But that's what I mostly used, I think, was Facebook to communicate with people, and then a little bit Instagram. Gosh, I don't know. I don't go on Facebook anymore. Too many. There's 871 friends on Facebook. Instagram, I use a bit more. I have 564 followers on Instagram. I don't really use anything else. I don't really care. I mean, I'll be honest, at this point, I use social media a max of maybe like 10 or 15 minutes a day. I only recently started using Tumblr because it's a way to connect with one specific person that I want to be connected with. Otherwise, I really don't talk. Social media is extremely bad for anyone going through any kind of, I think, divisive journey across the country. So for trans people, as an example, there's a lot of good because it connects you with people. And I think everyone, you know, who is questioning or, you know, curious or just trying to actually legitimately get to know things about trans people should connect with them online, because there's a ton of different ways to do it, and there is a lot of really good content and a lot of really useful information that can kind of help you be a better ally to like affirm trans people. But at the same time, like it's pretty toxic, it's bad. So I'll use the term they prefer, gender critical feminists. What I would call a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist, is someone, a lot of these pages, and it happens all the time, which is why I don't spend much time on social media. It definitely happens on Facebook, and it absolutely happens on Instagram. Hashtags are a way for you to try to follow. Obviously, you know what hashtag is used for. Like, I don't know if I need to explain that on this video, but obviously it's used to like bring people to your page that might relate with the content. But hashtags like trans rights are human rights, trans women are women, those hashtags are often, not sometimes, often used by gender critical feminists to lure trans people to their page to expose them to something that is not what they want to see. And there's a lot of really hurtful, divisive comments. There's a lot of just straight lies that will just come across those hashtags, and you can't really engage with it. Reporting it does nothing. Instagram literally does nothing to report or to take down trans exclusionary radical feminist views or gender critical views. They don't do anything to remove them unless it is directly bullying. Otherwise, if it's something like, this is false information, this cartoon implies that children at 6 years old are getting hormones or surgery or whatever, that's false information and is encouraging radical views. No, it doesn't, according to Instagram. So it's one of those things where, because that is forced upon me as a trans person wanting to follow hashtags relevant to me, it's something that I choose not to engage with. And definitely something I recommend most trans people limit their time on, because as affirming as it can be at times, it is also a platform that is being used to completely destroy our own self-worth. And I don't know, you don't need Instagram to be valid, like, you're great, the way you are, kind of thing. And I just learning to feel that way about myself rather than relying on the internet has been a really important part of that. Yeah, I mean, I'll continue like using Instagram a little bit to gain somewhat of a following, just because I do like to post things that are important to me. And even if 95% of people ignore it, it's not something that I see. What I do know is that most of them who follow me at least saw it. So if I post something that's important to me, then at least I know people saw it. It flashed across their screen. They don't have to like it. They don't have to react with it. I don't really care. At least it's there. And it's normally a more positive outlook. So I'll use it for that. And then I do want to get back into doing more YouTube videos, because it's something that makes me feel good, something I enjoy doing. And since realizing how a video can like do well, I was like, all right, well, maybe I'd like to get back into that. I'm actually planning to do a video on gender euphoria, since my first real video was on gender dysphoria. And I've really come to the point of realizing that it's the feeling good that encourages people to transition, and it's the feeling good that makes being trans valid, more so than the feeling bad about things. So that's what I kind of want to really touch on, because my old videos weren't very positive in that regard, in my opinion. I feel like they were very down on myself, down about being dysphoric, down on, being trans, even, maybe, is how I see them when I watch them now. And I just have such a more positive outlook on being trans, and I would want to put that out in the world now, because now I love being trans, and I love how good I feel doing the things that make me feel good. Nope. Only thing I think I've ever made DIY garment was that gaff, yeah, or like gaffs in general. Yeah. I think it's the only thing I ever felt like I needed. Most of my wardrobe came from like thrift shopping. I watched multiple videos online and a few like picture tutorials. And then after using the kind with like the tube sock, which is a very popular, it's super common like version of it, which I'm going to send one of those too. It's just like, it's the most common one that I think people use because it's sturdy and easier to use, and is not at all complicated. However, I found that by using just a pantyhose, it's a bit more economical, just because it literally is just, I don't need a sock now. It's all right there in one piece. And it also is a lot flatter. Even though, as I tried to point out, it has its flaws. So it's, it's harder to use. It can roll up and things like that. But because of it creating like a T-back shape, because of the material being stretchier, it just, I found, created a much flatter, like smoother front without any like bulge of padding. So that one, I just kind of made it up. No one told me how to do that one. Oh, no, I mean, it's one of those things that it's easier to replace sometimes because it's so cheap. It's something that literally anyone can make. So, and out of differing materials, as long as it makes sense, you need a waistband and a piece of fabric in the middle that can pull tight. It's super simple. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you can make it. Some people on my channel had talked about doing it like floral patterns and stuff. And I'm like, absolutely. If you can find floral patterned like pantyhose, but you could probably use tights. I just, again, it could start to get more bulgy again because the waistband would be a lot thicker at that point. Nope. Simple. It actually, I would say that's mostly that's mostly true. So I said that generally if I wear them, it's going to be with like a bathing suit. That is another reason to like go with like a black nylon, is just because if I have a suit that is black and white, then I can hide those things easier. Or if it pokes out at all, then it won't be as noticeable. So generally I would just try to color match with what I'm wearing, which generally just is going to mean black, just because in general, black is more flattening as a visual. You know what I mean? Like I always wear black bathing suit bottoms because it flattens things just visually. So black is a good recommendation. Dark colors in general, though. So I would say that as a trans woman just starting on hormones, and not having a butt, it was more affirming to wear a gaff that had a T-shaped design so that I could wear pants that were tight and could make me feel more affirmed about my butt. And that's the case for a lot of and that's the case for I would say a lot of trans feminine people just in general. And that was definitely the case for me. So that was part of, I think, what influenced it, was me wanting something that had a T-back design and didn't cross my butt, because then it was super obvious and I couldn't wear anything tight that felt affirming in that way anyway. So it didn't matter that I now was tucked and could wear tighter clothes, because the shape of it was restricting what I could wear anyways. So yeah, that was the main reason I chose that design. It seemed like it defeated the purpose sometimes, at least with the clothes that I was wearing. It didn't seem to accomplish what I was hoping for. It worked with certain things, so it would work well for skirts. So it would pull everything back, which is the design of it. That's what it's for. So it'd work great for skirts, dresses, but shorts, pants, anything that actually had a smaller crotch area, or anything with a tighter like butt area, it didn't work as well for, which is why I looked for an alternative. Because no matter on all levels, it was just bulkier and it just felt like noticeable. My first gaff that I made was like these purple nylons with a white tube sock, and it was, if it poked out at all, it was super obvious. And it also, like I said, restricted. I couldn't actually wear it with like pants. I had to only wear it with like skirts and dresses. So switching the materials allowed for more versatility in what I actually wore it with. Materials and everything out in front of me, like mise en place. I got my scissors and everything like that. I don't know, a minute at home. Somewhere you're comfortable getting undressed to try it on, because it's a really quick process. And once you're going to want to be able to make sure that the underneath fabric, like the knot waistband part of it, is what size you need. And that may take some trial and error. So it's nice to kind of be somewhere where you can go back and forth until you figure out what size like works for you. Especially if it's like the first one you're making, you got a whole leg to work with. So try a bunch of different sizes, see what looks the best, feels the best, does the job. And that's why I'd say just be somewhere you can easily try it on. No, never given away or sold. No one's ever asked me for any or anything like that. Just for myself. Filmed at home and Did my best. I think it was affirming, like I said, for myself. Um, so I would say I did it for the same reason that I started an Instagram page, which is a way to look back and see positive changes. Um, so beyond that, it actually felt like it was helping me to make them. I really liked that it felt like maybe it was helping other people. When I felt like it wasn't helping other people anymore is kind of when I slowed down on it. I wish I hadn't. I think I just needed to continue and try other content, but a lot was going on in my life, and honestly, managing that wouldn't have really been much of an option anyways. Um, but beyond that, yeah, I'd say those are the two things, like how good it made me feel and the hope that it was helping people. Yeah, some of them, yeah, for sure. And in general, I'd say I would answer that with I hope so. I don't know. Obviously, I can't speak for any kind of community, but I am also I'm always helpful. People get something out of it. So, and especially, yeah, some of them are directly talking about trans discrimination. So, in those, it was meant to be activist. It was meant to point out something that to me seemed obvious, but that it seemed like no one was talking about. Um, at least maybe no one was connecting the dots for me in that video or in that sense. And I think maybe that's what frustrated me is, but it's my own fault if I didn't connect the dots well enough for everyone else after that point. But that I was able to use that argument in person, which is why I decided to make the videos in the first place, is because I'd already been able to lay out three very related, very sequential things that could erase a person. So yeah, it was those were definitely direct activism, and I at least I hoped at the time. And I don't know if I changed anybody's mind through YouTube, but I know that I at least made a couple people in person aware of it. And one of them even like voted for the first time in their life for that reason. So like the argument alone was making the argument alone was enough, and I'm hopeful that someone got something out of it online, but it I don't know. Yeah. So at the time, a lot has been reversed. Luckily, I'm not going to say that the Biden administration has really done much like to promote trans rights or activisms, but they've at least reversed a lot of bad things. So the three I talked about, and I laid them out in the three videos, were housing, employment, and healthcare. And the main reasons I break it down that way is because employment first is going to be like a key thing, although I did include it in the middle of the video for some reason. I don't know why I ever did that. But the employment, if you don't protect someone's employment and it's a group that is often discriminated against, then obviously they're less likely to be employed, which can be statistically shown. Someone who's less likely to be employed loses two things. Number one, they lose healthcare. And then on top of that, they lose the ability to pay for stable housing. So now if you've taken away someone's job and you've taken away their house and you've put them in a position where now they have to ask for help and government assistance from somewhere. But with housing, the big problem was at the time, and it's still like not good, is that battered women's shelters, homeless shelters could deny trans women based on their gender, and it would force them onto the street. Now you've got someone without a job who's houseless, unable to gain support from any kind of like government assistance or housing, and has no health care on the street because they're denied health care based on LGBTQ status, which was a rule change that occurred at the time, like by the Trump administration, so that doctors and I think it was and insurance companies, but I would want to fact check myself on that. It's been a minute. Could deny people based on that for religious reasons. So since they could deny them, it gave the ability. I'm not saying it was forcing everyone down that path, but it definitely encouraged for that to happen, because once somebody, I mean, okay, they're living on the street, they can't get a job, they can't get housed, and they have no health care, they're just more likely to die. And you can see that, like, especially with trans people of color being hit the hardest, because those communities specifically are already underrepresented, underprivileged, um, underfunded, and it's going to hurt them the worst. And on top of, oh my gosh, there's so much more to it, honestly, just because hypermasculinization in those communities also encourages a lot more violence in those communities for trans people, especially trans feminine people. Um, so it's just, whew, I've got off track at this point, I think, but it's definitely a whole a whole thing. So, um, but the point being was, I lost my job um, after I came out as trans, and I never had health care because, I mean, I lived in Florida, and it really wasn't the easiest unless you had like a decent job. And housing was expensive. Luckily, I didn't end up homeless. I've been homeless in the past, but I didn't end up homeless this time. Um, we were able to just kind of stay in the apartment complex we were in because we were having trouble getting rented other places. And there's obviously no way for me to determine whether my trans status had anything to do with that. So I can't directly blame anything on anything that happened to me. But there's when coincidences stack up, you start to wonder. And a lot of trans people face coincidence stacking up on them, um, just because there's a lot of ways to work around the law, and the last administration was making that easier. Um, they made it easier to discriminate against everyone. Now, luckily, the Supreme Court affirmed like gender identity, but the Trump administration still fought against it every step of the way. And it also is still being fought against constantly, because regardless of the Supreme Court, we all know that that's a precedent. That is not a law, and is nothing that stands on its own. So like the Equality Act is like the most important thing right now, and there's like nothing being done about that. So that's where the bigger issue is at this point, now that we've reversed the literal erasure, is just to ensure that what rights we've started to establish are at least solidified. Mostly trans feminine people, especially my old videos. I hope that my newer videos can be a little more representative of the trans community as a whole, although still obviously from my perspective as a trans feminine person. But at the time, I definitely didn't have the knowledge to properly address the trans masculine or non-binary community. And I actually am not a huge fan of some of the ways that I described gender at that time, um, and sex. Gender and sex are both on a spectrum. And I mean, I have like a science degree. I do know that. And I still kind of let societal biases restrict that view for a long time. But it's one of those things where I think my perspective has broadened a lot more now, and I've educated myself a lot more. So I'd be able to speak hopefully to a wider audience. When at the time, I think I was mostly speaking to not even just trans women, but trans women who were just starting out, figuring out who they were, or just starting out trying to present feminine. Like, it was one of those things that it was very, very targeted at exactly who I was in that moment, and not at a broader like representation. Um, which, I mean, makes sense. I did it for my own affirmation at times. So it's where most of my research fell. It's where most of my focus ended up. Um, but I think now I can recognize a broader perspective on it. No, there was the one person I said that was it's a trans man in Florida. Got it. It's Eric Nicola, ERIK space NIKOLAH.
Great.
So we went back and forth a little bit with each other, and like we would watch each other's videos and things like that. That was the only person I was really connected with as far as like another YouTuber on on the platform on any kind of consistent basis. Yeah, the same reasons I did it. You know, I feel like I helped people. I feel like I affirmed myself. So you get out of it what you put into it. You get out of it what you want to get out of it. It's a lot of perspective. Yeah, it's positive. It can be a very positive experience. Um, I have to keep an eye on my comments because random people will just troll my page, but I just go through and delete it. Normally I get a notification about comments. And if it's something that's not a big deal or that is just like, good job or whatever, then I'll just like the comment and move on. Sometimes I'll reply to it. But with the negative ones, I just delete them at this point. It's just not worth it. Luckily, it's not like my videos are getting commented on every other day. So it's not like I have that much backlog or anything like that. I normally catch it within a few days or a week. I'll just randomly check my YouTube notifications and realize that I have a comment that is clearly just trying to be offensive. And I'll just delete it and block them, call it a day. Um, I'd say the biggest reason that I wanted to make that specific video was just to show that you don't have to have money because gaffes, especially when you're on social media, are advertised pretty consistently. Um, algorithms, they find us and they're like, oh, you've been looking up tucking. Here's a, $40 gaff for you. But you can, like I said, if you go online, you can make it for $3. And if you go to a store, you could probably make it for $5. Everyone can make it and everyone can normally get to a point of affording it. I mean, I know sometimes $5 is $5. That's food. So it's not a top priority, but it's cheaper than most makeup and still affirming. It's cheaper than a lot of things that trans women need. And it's still just as affirming as a lot of them.